This week's quick reminder is found in 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 5 to 8. For we never came with flattering speech, as you know, nor with a pretext for greed. God is witness. Nor did we seek glory from men, either from you or from others, even though as apostles of Christ we might have asserted our authority. But we proved to be gentle among you, as a nursing mother tenderly cares for her own children. Having so fond an affection for you, we were well pleased to impart to you not only the gospel of God, but our own lives, because you had become very dear to us. To quote our director here at His Hill, Charlie McCall, the Bible knows nothing of the concept of worship that does not require sacrifice. Romans 12:1 reads like this, Therefore I urge you, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies a living and holy sacrifice, acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship. C.T. Studd, an evangelist and missionary of the 19th and 20th century, was known as a famous cricket player in England who also had inherited a large fortune. After coming to Christ, he believed that the gospel was worth more than his wealth or his reputation. So he gave most of his inheritance away to places he found to be in need. He later fell in love and was engaged to be married, and he wanted his fiancée to understand his heart in this matter, so he informed her that he intended to give away nearly everything before they got married. And he found himself taken back by her response. You see, she was disappointed that he had not already given it all away. In this, we see that we may all have different understanding or conviction as to just what sacrifice is. And maybe, that's to be expected because, sacrifice really is up to God as to what He will require from us. And then for us, to give our yes to Him in. Paul describes how sacrifice in ministering to others played out in his life, as we find in our text here to the Thessalonians. First, we find in verse 5, the sacrifice of ministry came without flattering speech, which, according to Launita, means without praise as a means of gratifying someone's vanity. So in other words, this ministry doesn't come in a way of buttering up those that we're to be ministering to. And actually, this word is only found here in the New Testament. According to Morris, this word refers to the use of acceptable speech with the purpose of lulling someone into a sense of security so that one may obtain one's own ends. And Paul emphatically rejected this idea. This was not a work of selfishness. In Ephesians 4:25, we read this, Therefore, laying aside falsehood, speak truth each one of you with his neighbor, for we are members of one another. And in verse 29, he said, Let no unwholesome word proceed from your mouth, but only such a word as is good for edification, according to the need of the moment, so that it will give grace to those who hear. This ministry, this sacrifice does not come through flattering speech, buttering up the one that you're ministering to. Next, in verse 5, we see that this sacrifice in ministering to others was not with a pretext for greed. In other words, it didn't come in a cloak or with a mask for hiding greed. It actually is one word in the Greek, and it means to pretend to be engaged in a particular activity. This sacrifice of ministry isn't cloaked with pretense for something else. The same word is used in Acts 27, verse 30, and it's there that the sailors are dropping lifeboats into the water, pretending to be dropping anchors. So they're dropping the lifeboats to save themselves, pretending to be doing something to take care of everyone. So Paul and his companions were not pretending to minister the gospel in order to cover up a desire for accumulating selfish gain. Their ministry was not about them. In 2 Corinthians 12:14, Paul says there, "Here for this third time, I am ready to come to you, and I will not be a burden to you, for I do not seek what is yours, but you." He seeks the one he's ministering to. For children are not responsible to save up for their parents, but parents for their children. I will most gladly spend and be expended for your souls. So we see that this sacrifice of ministry did not come with a cloak, with a mask that hid selfish gain. Then we see that this sacrifice and ministry to the Thessalonians involved being laid bare before God. As we find in the statement in verse 5, God is my witness. We find, just a phrase earlier in the verse. He appeals to their observation of him, of the outward. We see that where he says, as you know. So, for we never came with flattering speech, as you know. You've seen this. Okay, so that's the outside. You've seen the outside. Now he will appeal to God regarding his heart, the inward. This is not to be taken lightly. In Psalm 139, verse 23, we read this, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my anxious thoughts, and see if there be any hurtful way in me, and lead me in the everlasting way." And again in 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 3 and 4, we read, "But to me it is a very small thing that I may be examined by you or by any human court. In fact, I do not even examine myself. For I am conscious of nothing against myself, yet I am not by this acquitted. But the one who examines me is the Lord." This sacrifice in ministry comes with going before the Lord and being laid bare. Lord, search my heart. Lord, do in me what you need to do, that this might be your work of ministry. This is not to be taken lightly or flippantly. This sacrifice in ministry to the Thessalonians is seen by not seeking glory from men, according to verse 6. And the word glory means to speak of something as being unusually fine and, get this, deserving honor. The ministry, the sacrifice of ministry that is a reality of the life of Christ in us is not one that wants to come across as I deserve honor. Matthew 6:2 says this, "So when you give to the poor, do not sound a trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, so that they may be honored by men. Truly I say to you, they have their reward in full." And in John 3, verse 30, John the Baptist makes this statement. As Christ's new ministry was beginning to overshadow his established ministry, he said this, "He, Christ, must increase, but I must decrease." So we see in this that Paul and his companions are not seeking recognition or to be considered the source of God's ministry to the church. And then we see that this sacrifice in ministering to the Thessalonians involved tender care, according to verse 7, which means the word tender means to take care of with the implication of cherishing and concerning. This was true of Christ. According to Ephesians 5:29, we read, "For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ also does the church." It's been pointed out that the word tender in our text here means to give whatever is needed or whatever is necessary. And this is true of Christ. If he lives in us, then his ministry through us will be the same. And then finally, we see that this sacrifice in ministry to the Thessalonians involved imparting the gospel as well as their own lives to those they ministered to, as found in verse 8. The word impart means to share with someone else what one has. 1 John 3:16 says, "We know love by this, that he laid down his life for us." And we ought to lay down our lives for the brethren. In Philippians 2 and verse 3, or starting in verse 3 through 7, reads like this: "Do nothing from selfishness or empty conceit, but with humility of mind regard one another as more important than yourselves. Do not merely look out for your own personal interests, but also the interests of others. Have this attitude in yourselves, which was also in Christ Jesus, who, although he existed in the form of God, did not regard equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself, taking the form of a bond servant, and being made in the likeness of men." So we see that this sacrifice of ministry is shown not having flattering speech, without the pretext or cloak or mask of greed. This sacrifice in ministry, it comes with the need for God to examine my heart, to be laid bare open to him. And it comes with not seeking glory for ourselves. And finally, remember, it comes with a tenderness for the one being ministered to. All of this is a result of God's grace and peace as found in Christ, according to chapter 1, verse 1. This is the result of Christ's life in us, shown through us. In order to prepare himself for life on the mission field, Hudson Taylor decided that he should live and minister among those who didn't have much. So he moved to a low-income community that was called Drainside. One trial that he regularly dealt with while living there was being paid late by his employer. And one day, as the weekend was approaching, he found that he only had 1/2 crown in his pocket, which today would be worth about $10 to $12. So on his way home, a man approached him who said that his wife had recently delivered a baby, and neither she or the baby were doing well. So he asked Hudson to come and pray for them. Well, being consumed with his own trouble, he wasn't in the mood to help anybody that night. As he arrived in this family's apartment, he found that there were several children. They were starving, and the mother was lying on a cot with the baby, moaning. And so it was obvious to him that not only the woman and the baby were in bad shape, but that the whole family was malnourished. And Hudson knew that the Lord was requiring of him to give this family his 1/2 crown, which was all that he had. It was something he didn't want to do. Later, he would write about this event, and it went like this. He said, "I began to tell them they must not be cast down, that though their circumstances were very distressing, there was a kind and loving Father in heaven. But something within me cried, 'You hypocrite!' telling these unconverted people that there was a kind and loving Father in heaven, and not prepared yourself to trust him with a 1/2 crown. I was nearly choked at the thought," he said. So he put his hand into his pocket and he slowly presented the 1/2 crown. He gave it to the man. And so this family would be well fed that night. Hudson returned home, and as he ate the last of his food, he would later bow his head in prayer that night, thanking God for enabling him to give away everything that he had to help this family. And then, in faith, he mentioned to the Lord that he was out of money and he didn't have any food. Now, the following day, an unmarked package arrived, and inside was a pair of winter gloves. Tucked within one of them, Taylor found 4 times the amount of money that he had just given away. He would later say that his mind often went back to that moment. And in doing so, he would be reminded of God's enabling and providing in the sacrifice of ministering to the needs of others. Have this attitude in yourselves, which was also in Christ Jesus. Are you living sacrificially toward others? My name is Kelly Daugherty, and I'm the host of the His Hill podcast. This has been one of our quick reminders, which are dropped every Tuesday morning. If you would like to hear one of our longer episodes, you'll find a new one every Thursday morning. And if you want to get in touch with me, you can do so by email. That address is Kelly, Kelly, at hishill.org. Thanks for listening. And remember, keep your eyes fixed on Jesus.